Welcome to Show Me Yours. I am Rihanna Werner, your co-host, along with Jason Sheffield.
Hey, everybody.
We're so happy you joined us today. Today, you are in for a special treat. We are here with Don Niemeyer, Story Coffee. And what an incredible story it is. This man created a business out of a tiny home where you raised your children, right?
Close. We raised two of our children in a RV that was about the same size.
Oh, okay.
So that led to the idea of the tiny house.
Still about the same size.
Yeah.
Wowza. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. And he's got an incredible, deeper story that we're going to jump into. And then we're going to ask some really crazy questions. You guys may have seen in our last episode, we introduced
the Show Me Yours bucket.
And we had so much fun with it. We thought we would pull it out on Don. And
love it.
Yeah,
That's
he
good.
graciously agreed, which was wonderful. So we're going to play with the bucket a little bit later. But Don, I would love for you to talk with our viewers and listeners today about how in the world you came up with the brilliant idea of opening up a tiny home coffee shop in Acacia Park.
Yeah.
Okay, so start from the beginning.
Oh, the beginning. So I get this question at least weekly, maybe not quite daily, but a lot. What's the story? A story. And I got a lot of different versions of the answer depending on how much time we have. I'll kind of tell you the little bit medium version. My wife and I, we lived here in Colorado Springs and got married and wanted to go. I was working at Starbucks at the time and wanted to go do something, that was her and me, not, she lived in Texas when we met. So she moved here to be with me. And it was like me in my context, add Carissa. And so we were like, hey, let's go someplace where it's Don and Carissa. So we looked around and Portland, Oregon was an interesting place. And so we packed up with one daughter at the time. And then we were pregnant with the second one. I've got 4 daughters now. And took off to Portland, Oregon, where we ended up getting involved in the coffee scene out there. So we spent 8 or 9 years out there just learning everything that we could about coffee. We had a mentor that at one point we were like, what's the next step? And he said, y'all should get into judging competitions. We're like, oh, we could never do that. What even is that, But he said, well, there's a training this weekend. You should go to that training, and then you'll kind of see. Well, to our shock, we went to the training, and they said, yeah, y'all get in here. You're going to be judges. And so we started judging coffee competitions. And so we did that for years. And by so doing, what you end up doing is you're just hanging out with some of the finest in the industry, the people that are competing at the highest levels, national levels. And so we were just learning a lot.
Really quick, coffee competitions. What are you judging? Like the beans, the taste, the creativity behind making a latte?
Yeah.
I've never even heard of a coffee competition.
We could have a whole episode about that. But the short answer is it's a barista competition. So you're judging barista skills.
Okay.
They make coffee for you, serve it to you, you taste it.
How long ago was this?
So we started that in somewhere around 2008.
Okay, so like right as third wave coffee is coming online and the barista movement's happening, you guys are like in it, and you're starting to figure out how to like kind of ride that wave and
totally
that.
In a city that is known for it. Yeah,
exactly.
Portland is like one of the best cities in the world for that kind of thing. So the point there is we were just learning.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, our two little girls now were growing up, and we decided we don't want to be so far away from home. So we wanted to go back to somewhere around Colorado, closer to family. I'm from Oklahoma. I wasn't going to go back to Oklahoma, but my wife's from Missouri, so we thought we can be on the Front Range, back in Colorado. We weren't coming to Colorado Springs, though, because we were like, I've already been there. Yeah. Why would we go there again? Let's do something different. So we were kind of looking at Fort Collins, which I know you spent some time in. And anyway, we just got I got this idea one day. I was like, hey, you know what? We're going to be selling at this time we had 3 coffee shops out there. So we're going to be selling our coffee shops. We're not going to be rich, but we got a little money in our pockets. Why don't we spend maybe a couple of weeks just kind of like between here and Colorado, between Oregon and Colorado, we'll just like, go to a few coffee shops, kind of see what's out there. Then that idea grew into like, well, if we had the right machine, we could do this for even longer than 2 weeks. And it was this crazy idea of like a 2-week vacation. What if it was 3 weeks? You know, that seemed insane. Well, that kept growing. And then we got our hands on this little mini RV called a Volkswagen Rialta, which was perfect for 4 people. Pretty small, drives like a car, gets pretty good gas mileage, but big enough that we could all be in there, you know. And we thought, let's just hit the road and see where it takes us. Well, that led to, there's another part of the story where you ended up not leaving town for 2 years. It's a whole other great story, but I won't get into that right now. So we literally ended up living in this RV on the streets of Portland, running businesses, taking our kids to school for like 2 years, acting as if we were normal, but we were truly homeless. Like we just lived in an RV, and we loved it. The whole thing was hilarious.
Fun.
And, you know, we were learning so much stuff. Our kids loved it. You know, we were waking up in interesting places every day and just going wherever we wanted to, you know, saving a ton of money, by the way, because now, for the obvious reasons. Well, we finally did sell. We got into a problem selling our third shop. We finally did sell it, took off, and spent a year traveling around. And we knew we wanted to do something in coffee, but we didn't know what. So we were looking at different ideas. And somewhere during that trip, we got the idea, you know what, we're getting pretty good at minimalist living. Like accidentally, we weren't planning on doing this it ended up being 4 years. We weren't planning on living in 100 square feet with 4 people for 4 years, but that's what ended up happening. So therefore, just by accident, we got kind of good at it. And so we thought, we kind of know how to use tiny spaces. What if we built a tiny coffee shop? And then we kind of, that'd be hilarious, you know? And then we're like, no, but really, like, what would that be like, you know? And that turned into the idea of a tiny house coffee shop. And so that's what we built. And to just, you know, maybe this could go a bunch of different places, but to button that up, because the next question, well, like, how'd you get in Acacia Park?
Yeah.
So I'll answer that, which is another accident. So the best things in my life have been accidents. I think that's true for a lot of people, you know. But, you know, if just to get philosophical for a second, accidents come, but if you're paying attention, it's when you're like, hey, I noticed something there. What if we turned that we weren't really doing on purpose, because you do some things on purpose as well, but like I wasn't really doing this on purpose, but like I ended up with this skill set. I wonder if there's a way. And curiosity is one of our core values of like, I just wonder what there is here. I wonder what could be possible. Let's get down and play with that a little bit. So anyway, we played with that idea, built the tiny house, but we didn't know where we were going to put it. Our thought was that if we went to somebody and said, hey, can we build a tiny house coffee shop and put it on your property? They would say what anybody would say, which is, what is a tiny house coffee shop? Because as far as we know, that it hadn't existed before. There certainly are small shops in, you know, trailers and different things. But as far as a tiny house, our unique, you know, competitive advantage, if you want to say it that way, was that people could come inside. So we weren't just serving out a window like a food truck, but you could come inside and kind of have what we wanted to be an elegant experience. So we built it first and then started kind of pitching, you know, hey, we have this. We would show pictures of it. We are in possession of this. What do you think? And the entity that answered the question affirmative was accidentally the city of Colorado Springs. Because as you guys know, they have an ice skating rink that opens up every year, and they had been running it for a couple of years. This was 10 years ago, but they had gotten a little feedback consistently, which was like, skating's great. It'd be cool to have a place to get a warm drink, maybe a warming place to warm up, you know, before we go. And they were like, and that's what you've built here, and it's on wheels. So you could park it right next to the ice skating rink. And I said, well, I'm looking for a permanent location. And they said, well, do you have one? I was like, no. They said, well, this could be a place to kind of try it out. And I was like, you know what? Let's go. Let's do it. So we set up in the middle of Acacia Park and served hot chocolates to ice skaters for about 3 months. And then that turned into an invitation to stay there. I always say I would never have even had the thought to approach the city of Colorado Springs and say, what do you think? Can I put a business in your park? Because they'd be like, get out of here. What are you talking about? We don't even do that. But because it was a shared need and a shared vision, and because we joined in with them at something they were doing, met a need that they had. And by the time that was over, they were like, man, everybody seems to like y'all being in the park. Why don't you just stay here? And that was 10 years ago, and we moved to the edge of the park, and we've been sitting there it'll be 10 years this November.
Wow. What was that moment like when you heard back from Colorado Springs and they're like, we want you?
Oh, unbelievable.
That must have been jubilation.
Well, yeah, because you can't, like I said, I wouldn't even cross my mind to ask for that. But I was like, you want us to come where? And they're like, right here in the middle of downtown Colorado Springs. in the middle of the park. I was like, okay, let's do that.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. I mean, there were some problems. We didn't know where we'd get electricity, water. You know, there were some problems.
Yeah.
We solved those problems. And
There's got to be some complexity to, though, working with the city and being in a city park. I mean, is there a permitting process?
There is.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite. I love to tell this bit because the piece of paper that I signed to be there, it's something that in the world that they live in, they have such a thing for you to do that. It's called a revocable permit. And I'm like, revocable? Can we talk a little bit more about revocable?
What does that
Where
mean?
are you going with that? You know, I tell people, like, when I got married, I didn't get a revocable marriage license. So, like, I kind of want a commitment here. You know, like if you open a business, you sign a lease for 5 years or whatever it is. You're like, I kind of want a commitment.
Exactly.
They have no such thing. It's like, well, we think we're going to leave you there for a while, but the permit itself is called revocable. And I tell people, like, if you're going to sell hot dogs at a parade, you would need a revocable permit. That's just the language they put on it. So they gave me a longer term revocable permit that I've been working off of for 10 years now. To answer this question, by the way, the city's been great. Yeah. And I think it's been great, number one, because it's a great city, you know, good people that we're able to work with. But, you know, to our credit, if there is any, we are, again, I said it already, we are operating as somebody who understands we're not, you know, you're not here to help us. We're plugging into a thing that you're doing, and we're going to do that. We're going to, what are your needs? How do you want us to do here? You know? And so, you know, with regards to everything from how much insurance they require to, you know, operating, they're like, well, we want you to be open when the ice skating rink's open. Done.
Yeah.
And so we'll, every second that the ice rink was open for the first 2 or 3 years, we did come to another understanding later. Because, newsflash, Monday afternoon at 4:00 during school, there's nobody out there. So they're like, okay, you know, maybe not every second. But anyway, we try to be open whenever they want us to be open. We try to be nice to people. We try to be nice to people who weren't there as our customers. They would come like, hey, can you tell us where the nearest bathroom is? Oh, absolutely, right over here. You know, we just try to be nice and try to serve their purposes. And of course, and this is, again, philosophical, when we serve their purposes, then it reciprocates, and then we get our needs met as well. So that's what we've been doing that for 10 years now, and we have a great relationship with City.
That's wonderful.
So then take us through a little bit to the evolution of the second location. So kind of out of the tiny house, you guys then open up the second location in Okaro City. Take us through kind of that shift to now more of like an actual physical location that's in a shared space. So it kind of has some of that more communal element to it, but take us a little bit through that piece.
Yeah, so people would frequently, you know, they'll come in the little thing and they look around. They're like, man, y'all thinking about having a real coffee shop sometime? And I would, you know, I didn't say this out loud, but like, as opposed to this fake one, this imaginary one, the one where I just made you a cup of coffee, you know. But, you know, I understand, you know, you just alluded to it, like it's not a traditional space. It's not a brick and mortar or whatever. And so that conversation would frequently go to, you know, when are you wanting to do that? You know, when might you do that? And I always say, well, I hope I never do that because I like my simplicity. We as a company and us as a family, we chase simplicity all the time. That's our drive, one of our driving, you know, factors. And so we had gotten it to where, you know, our overhead is really low. Yes, we do pay to be in the park, but we have our own building, so it's less than if we had to rent a space, right? So our overhead's low, our operation's simple, and we had kind of carved out a way. We're like, well, you know, nobody's getting rich here, but we're paying our bills, and like life is simple. Go home and play with my kids. This is great. But then my buddy Ryan Lloyd, he's an architect that's done some of the more interesting jobs around town, and I've been knowing him for about 20 years. He and his wife Valerie bought an old building over there that is now known as the Sluice Building. Used to be the what was it? The
Army Surplus.
The Army
right?
Surplus. Yeah. The Army Surplus store. A lot of people will remember it as that. Anyway, they bought that building and they had a vision for like turning it into a community space. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not really interested. Like we'd like I don't know, what'd you have in mind? And that question, what'd you have in mind, turned into like we were dreaming of these things, you know, a community space that you just touched on, a space where, you know, makers and dreamers and creators can share resources and be in here together. And it's like, oh man, that sounds like the kind of thing I want to do, you know? Yeah. And so they said, well, we need coffee. I said, well, I can do that, you know? So that led to us, you know, moving in over there. And so we all built that at the same time. But I said, but we're going to keep it simple. Like we don't want a big palace. We just want like our small footprint. I said, okay, we'll allocate you about 450 square feet, which they did. But what has ended up turning out turning out to be the case is because there's 12,000 square feet there. Some of it's shared space, and that is open for Story Coffee customers to use. And that's the vision of the building. They want it to be open for the community. And so there's a set of bleachers there where they have events and different things and little tables and stuff. And then there's a 40-foot deck out front that, that's a shared space as well. But our customers benefit from all those shared spaces. And so it feels like we have all this space, but we just pay for that one little, the 450 square feet that's specifically for us. And we have loved it. It's been a great move for us. It's given us, more possibility as far as like gathering and meeting and people that come and meet with their friends. There's more space for them to do that. So it's been a great move for us.
What a great way to keep it simple, but yet still give so much more to the community. I mean, you have a total of, from what I'm counting, 550 square combined feet. And here you are fueling an ice skating rink and the Old Colorado City corridor full of caffeine. I mean, that's pretty incredible with simplicity as your core.
That's the hope, yeah.
Yeah, that's impressive.
And you guys were one of the, if I remember correctly, the first true, what felt like third wave good coffee in town. I remember the first time you guys popped up in Acacia, and I was like, oh my gosh. It felt like Portland coffee had arrived at Colorado Springs.
Yeah, thank you.
It wasn't like Starbucks.
At that time, it was Wild Goose, which is, of course, not exist anymore. And then the principal's office was doing some really good coffee.
Yeah.
But then, we were the ones after that. And right after us, it was Loyal. Of course. Oh, well, by the way, Switchback was around.
Right. They were roasting.
They were roasting, but they have since become, one of the finest operations in town. At the time, they were mostly just roasting coffee. That's a whole other story, but their cafe wasn't named Switchback. It was called 50/50. And anyway,
that's Brandon, right?
Old schoolers, Brandon Del Grosso. Old schoolers will remember that.
Yeah.
But again, today, one of the finest, in town, but they weren't doing then what they're doing now.
Yeah.
So I'd like to think we were one of the first
innovators in town for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like in all of this, it's the coffee talk and movement of your philosophies, how has that driven you as a business leader? Like, yes, you've been a pioneer on these other things. It's very tactile and like actually the doing of the coffee. But now there's like running a successful business for the last 15 plus years. And then obviously the years in Portland. So as a business kind of leader and an entrepreneur, how has some of that thinking kind of bled into how you've led your organization?
Yeah, that's a broad question.
It's a broad one, and then we'll dive into the bucket. But I want to know a little bit more, just kind of like, or maybe we can kind of focus it in a little bit more. And I'm just curious, like, why step into the entrepreneurial path, right? I mean, you've learned coffee, you have a skill set, you've obviously passed that skill set on to your baristas. They know what they're doing. For you, what was that kind of thing where you're like, no, there's an entrepreneurial piece to this for me as well?
There's a lot of ways I could go with that, but I'll go with this one because it's funny. I kept getting fired from other jobs, and I think that's
entrepreneur's resume.
That's an entrepreneur's resume. Like in every case, I thought, and I think to this day, I was solving problems. Like I've got this creative solution here that's going to solve a problem for us. It's going to be my employees. I was managing. This was one of the most recently. Well, I got fired from Starbucks, and then for doing what I thought was a good thing. And then I took a job at Verizon Wireless. I was managing, just selling, wireless phones. And I got fired from them. And, I'm like, my team is happy. My customers are happy. The company's making more money. And they're like, yeah, but that broke a little obscure rule. I'm like, well, your rules are dumb. Like, this, and as it turns out, that's the wrong answer. They're like, there's the door, buddy. See you. And so, so I literally kept getting fired from like corporate America jobs, and somewhere along the way, I think I should be doing my own thing. So I think it's true for a lot of entrepreneurs. You don't become an entrepreneur because I think I might like to try that out. You do it because that's the only path for you. There's not. I mean, part of it is I guess I could say I wasn't really good at, playing by the corporate rules. But the other thing I can certainly say is I didn't like it. Yeah. I don't like having creative solutions, but being told, don't get back in your box and just do what we said, Some people thrive in that. At one of my shops in Portland, we had a guy who was a mail carrier. And while I was, he would come and get his coffee every day. And during that season, he retired. And so we had conversations about, hey, you've been doing this for like 40 years. He's like, yeah, I have the same route too. And he was real proud of that. It's like, so you get a stack of papers and you walk in a circle and drop the papers off. He's like, yep. And I'm like, God bless you.
Yeah.
If that were, I mean, he made good money. He retired well. If you can do that, not me, man. Walking in that circle with those papers every day, I couldn't do it, you know. So it's just kind of like you realize this is who I am, you know.
Yeah.
And you're just answering the call of like what I must do, you know, kind of thing.
It's built into your core.
It's built into your core.
It really, truly is. And until you actually realize it, you always feel like something's missing from your soul.
Yeah.
And I know, gosh, hearing you speak to that, it takes me back to my corporate days. I mean, I was in corporate human resources, and I was expected to be the policy police.
Yeah.
And that just killed my soul. And kind of like you know, I'm a rule breaker. And I'm like, well, these policies are great, but really, do they dictate every aspect of how we deal with humans?
I think they do in that context.
They do.
There's a set of rules, and you're supposed to follow
And
those
you're
rules.
supposed
Yeah.
to. And I'm like, let's work with people. And
Yeah.
boy, every time I asked a question about breaking those rules, I got that pushback.
Yeah, and I think that you know one of the things I was doing is adjusting my inventory, you know, in what you could kind of call a shady way. It was making it right, but in a way that wasn't the policy. And they explained to me, so you understand, like this is how someone could steal. I'm like, well, they could, but this car charger's like it's a $3 thing. They're like, yeah, but we have these policies because next, it could, you know, you learn to do it that way. Next, it could be a $600 phone. I'm like, yeah, you make a strong point, and then they said, there's the door.
Yeah.
So I see why they have my point. I see why they have those.
Yeah.
They have to have those.
They do.
But I don't have to be there.
I tell all my clients they need policies.
Yeah.
But there's also adaptation and rationale and yeah. Oh, anyways, I totally get it. And I feel your journey. And it's interesting, you know, we're an HR firm and we'll get resumes sent to us or for a client or something. And I'll look at their resume and I'm like, they don't know it yet, but they're an entrepreneur.
Oh,
They
yeah.
don't
You
know
can
it
see.
yet.
Yeah.
You can see it. Yeah. It's interesting. So, yeah.
Let's shift to the bucket.
Really quick. I
Yes,
have
what's
one more
your final question?
I'm dying to know today. What is the square footage of your home that you and your family are living in?
That's a fair question. It's 1,001.
Okay.
1,001. When we moved in there was 6 of us.
Wow.
And then we added a dog. Since then, my 2 oldest daughters, who are now, they're almost 21 and 19, they've mostly moved out. One of them's totally moved out. She bought a house and she owns a house and she's doing great. And the other one's doing great too. But one of the things that I've done with both my older daughters is there's the whole story here as well. But suffice it to say, we each have built with them their own tiny house. So we did it with the older one. She lived in it in our backyard for 2 years, and now she owns she sold that. Now she owns another house. And then now my almost 19-year-old, she and I have built one, and she's currently living in our backyard. So she still comes in for meals and showers and stuff because it doesn't have a shower. So she's moved out, but she didn't get very far, you know. And it's a transition. You know, next she'll go do her own thing. So mostly in that 1,001 square feet there's just 4 of us now.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a brilliant idea to build a tiny home with your kid. That's amazing. I need my daughter to have one. She's 22.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't live at home, but gosh, that would be such an ideal scenario.
They save a
That's
ton of
so
money.
smart.
They get some independence. They learn some, actual practical skills. Both my daughters know how to use power tools and nailers and stuff, and whether they'll use those or not, I don't know. But, like I said, my almost 21-year-old is a homeowner now. And so, she's got projects she has to do sometimes, and she's got a few skills, a few tools, so.
And also learning how to live out of a small space is like a lesson in of itself.
It is.
Right. So we have a tiny house that we have up in Buena Vista.
Oh, you do?
That
Okay.
we rent out mainly as an Airbnb.
Yeah.
But anytime with the 6 of us, we get in that thing and all of a sudden it's like, whoa.
What's
6
the square
people.
footage of that?
Goodness, I can't even, I don't know off the top of my head. It's
tiny.
It's tiny.
Yeah.
It has 2 beds, like 2 little lofts off of each of the trailers, like a 20-foot trailer.
Okay.
So it's probably 150 square feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So bathroom, little kitchen. It's like,
Well, if it's 20 foot long and it's 8 foot wide or so, it's 160. So something like that.
So,
That's tiny.
So it is.
Yeah. 6 people in there is a lot of people.
It is,
Yes,
but it's
that
fun,
is.
right? Like when you get everybody in there and it just kind of shifts that piece of like where you spend your space and where you spend your time and having to be together.
Yeah. And have to make intentional decisions decisions. And, you said the being together piece, like if you've got a house where you got, in my case, I have 4 daughters and every one of them has their own room and they all can just like scatter and like do their own thing. That's a thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's a thing. That don't happen in my house. It's like you're not getting along with her. You got to have a conversation and figure it out because y'all going to be in there together.
Yeah.
Right there.
There's no place to go.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
that's a good point. Yeah,
Skills
it
to
definitely
learn.
creates problem solving, intentional movement, but also conflict resolution.
It
which
does.
is wonderful.
And we've had a lot of conflict to resolve in our house.
4 girls, absolutely.
Totally.
Okay,
All right, we ready?
ready?
Let's
All
give it over
right.
to the bucket.
Break it open.
Okay.
Let it be.
Feel
Oh, I get a draw?
You get to draw, absolutely.
Let the chips fall where they may.
Yes.
Oh, got
Do I
it.
read it?
There
Yeah.
you go. You can read it.
See where my glasses are. I think I can do it.
Need to borrow mine?
I think I got it. What's the toughest feedback you ever received about your business or leadership style? And how did you or didn't you accept it? Okay, the toughest feedback you ever received about your business or leadership style. The toughest feedback. I've already talked a little bit about how I kept getting fired, so those were some tough moments. A story that comes to mind, I'm trying to think of how applicable it is here, but when I was much younger, I had a job where I'll just suffice to say there were kind of 2 aspects to the job, and I cared more about one than the other. And I was constantly like kind of doing a halfway job on the other one. And then one day, I guess my boss had his fill of that. And so in a very public, in front of everybody moment, I'll never forget exactly the words he said. He said, "I don't see you following through with very much, bud." That was tough.
Ouch.
I was like, okay, first of all, bud, really? We're going to do that?
Yeah.
You're going to call me bud because you're mad? But I just remember, being super flustered and caught off guard because I thought I was the golden child and everything amazingly, I don't think that was the right way to handle that, but he was not wrong. He was right. He was half right. I was following through with everything on the thing that I cared about.
Right.
My little pet thing. But the other thing, which was a part of my job, I was kind of like phoning it in, And so while I think he could have delivered that message a little less publicly and with maybe less, kind of condescending language,
A little thoughtfulness.
a little thoughtfulness would have been good.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, he was right. And I think I was maybe 21 at the time. So it was hard for my 21-year-old ego, never mind my 55-year-old one now. But, man, my ego then was, unchallenged. And so that was the first time anybody ever, kind of in Oklahoma, they jerked the slack out of me,
What was your initial reaction?
I mean, just acquiescence and oh, okay, yeah. I will say anything right now for you to quit talking to me like
Right.
this in front of all these people.
Yeah.
What do I need to do? Kind of a thing. And then, I did a better job. And it did have the intended outcome. That's another lesson, too. Sometimes you can have the intended outcome. I did start doing a better job, but that did stick with me. It didn't do anything for our relationship.
Yeah.
You know? It undermines some of what I would call his credibility with me. And so I think about stuff like that all the time. Now I'm the old guy, as by definition, I'm, in my 50s. When you hire people at a coffee shop, it's almost always 20 somethings,
Yeah.
And so I'm, just math. I'm 30 years older than these people, So I have those moments where I want to say, I don't see you following through with too much, bud. But I try to remember, I don't think that's the language and the way you want to, deliver that message, and do I do well? I don't know. Ask the people that work for me. I think I probably do well sometimes, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes, I fail, and sometimes I miss the moment and misunderstand the best path here. And then there's this other tricky thing, which, if you've done HR, I guess both of y'all, people are different. Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
One size does not fit all.
And unpredictable.
And they're unpredictable. So
Yeah.
what might be, I might be able to say to you, hey, I need you to do a better job on this report. And you're like, okay, got it. And if I say, hey, I need you to do a better job on this report, you're like, why are you talking to me like that, man? You know, like
Yep.
people are different. They have different personalities, different things motivate them, you know, and so that's one of the challenges of leadership is, you know, I always say, you know, there are times and places and contexts where it is my line to hold. This is the standard. This is what we do. This is how it works here. Step up and do this. And then there's other times where it's like, well, who are you?
Yeah.
Yes, I've got this line, but like, how are you going to get there?
Yeah.
You know, when I might say, you know what, let's forget about that. Let's talk about this line over here for you. Not that I'm lowering the bar, but like, you know, some people, for example, I was telling somebody yesterday, I had this employee who, you know, her way of talking is just flat, you know. So whereas you might be like, "Hey, how's it going? It's so good to see you. Let me get you some coffee," you know, kind of thing. She's not like that. You know, she's like, "Hi, I get you some coffee today." Yeah, no, we can do that. Absolutely, it's gonna be $5. It's just flat. So I tried to coach into her. This was years ago.
Yeah.
That was a dead end street, man.
Yeah.
Months of being like, hey, try it with this tone, and remember, you know, gotta go to where the customer is or whatever. It accomplished zero.
Probably made her feel like a failure too.
I think it did. Yeah. And at some point, I had to come like, hey, you know what? You do you.
You be you.
You be you. And if that doesn't work here, then we'll, you know, maybe help you find a job where that does work. But as it turns out, she's a great employee. In fact, she's been gone for a couple of years. We're talking about maybe her coming back. She's moving back to the Springs, and she's like, hey, if you got a spot, you know. So I might even bring her back. Great person, but it's just realizing not everybody's the same.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely.
Shocker.
I oftentimes
Nope, you go.
I oftentimes tell my clients, I'm like, it's not the golden rule in leadership. You know, do unto others as you like done unto you. Throw that to the side. That's the biggest rubbish ever. That rule, just toss it in the can. The platinum rule is where it's at.
Okay.
Do unto others as they would like done unto them, which means leaders have to step out of their own skin.
Yeah.
Understand the needs of others. Actually give a shit about who that person is in front of them and meet their needs. And I think you just gave a perfect picture
Are you
of that.
familiar with Radical Candor? I think is the.
I am.
That's her whole thing.
I'm a
is you've
huge
got
fan.
to care about that. But you can't start with, here's what I want. You got to start with caring about the person in front of you. Realize that is a person.
It is.
You know, that's what I wanted that guy to me, like the Bud guy. Like, I'm a person, man. I'm not just like a tool to meet your goals.
Yeah.
I didn't get that. So I try. I mean, in my very best, I do remember these are people.
Yeah. And in that moment that guy, that manager had his Bud moment with you.
Yeah.
He lost probably 95% of your loyalty. Whereas an hour prior to that, you probably would have jumped up and done most things for him.
Yeah,
all
that's
in,
right. Totally.
And then after that moment, you're like, screw you.
Right.
Why? Why would I do that for you? Yeah.
I'm curious. I want to kind of deepen this question a little bit because you've done a lot of innovative things. You've opened up a very innovative coffee shop out of a tiny house. You have philosophies and some standards and how you do things. I'm curious, how have you received feedback on how you've done these things? And has there ever been a moment where, you know, you holding a standard has actually cost you something, either having to let go of an employee or missing out on one opportunity that maybe you thought was right, but it didn't meet the standards. And so therefore you gave up on it and it led to an accident that was maybe better. But in some way, like in that vein of, it feels like you have a lot of clarity around how you do things, who you are, what you want done. Have you received feedback about that that's been challenging or kind of, a hiccup, if you will, in that process?
Yeah. I mean, dozens of times, you know, like I've got I've been doing this for 20 years now altogether or something like that. And I could, if I sat down and wrote it out, it'd be a long list of former employees who don't like me. You know, it didn't go well. You know, one or two of them have come back and circled back around and said, hey, just want you to know that I figured a few things out in this life. Thank you for what you were trying to do back then. I know that I was really a snot about it, but I can see now what you're up to. That doesn't mean, though, that I was always up to the right thing. Yeah. Some people are mad at me that should be mad at me because I mishandled something, you know. I made mistakes, you know.
Newsflash, you're human.
Newsflash, you know, it
you're
does
human
happen.
Too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, certainly there have been, you know, those types of situations. We're kind of leaning a little heavy now, but that's okay. I'll try to hold up.
Show me yours.
Show me yours. Yeah, no, that's
You know?
good. I have one employee that comes to mind that, and I've got a number of people that the way I even talk about them, I say they broke my heart, because I love this person, and I just felt like there was so much, possibility, there, and maybe I could have handled it differently. I mean, there are times I'm like, man, I did everything I could. Yeah. And then there's other times I'm like, I don't know, could I have done more? Maybe.
I think you just nailed it, though. You did everything you could.
I do everything I knew to do.
Yeah, it's also a two-way street, too. I mean, other people have to be receptive to your giving and what you have to offer. And it doesn't always work out that way. I reflect on a few employees that have broken my heart, too. You put in all that belief and pour into them, and then they walk away in some way, and you think, gosh, if only. But really.
But a part of it, too, is a judgment about, or a series of judgments about, is this person mine to care for? Because I do think that way about life. Like, you're mine to care for. One of the things that we say as a little aside about our, a lot of times people want to talk about our engagement with the homeless community down in Acacia Park. And the way I tell that story, this is what literally happened, was we didn't ask to be in Acacia Park. That's just what happened. But once we got there, we looked around like, there's a bunch of homeless people around here. Here we are.
What do we do?
What do we do? And my philosophy, my belief, what have been trained in is like, you don't always ask for the people you're given, but once you are given those people, those are your people to care for, right? So we have worked with the Marion House for years, and giving a portion of our proceeds to them because they take care of those people. You know what I mean? So we're not equipped to care for, unhoused folks, mentally unstable folks, whatever, drug addicted folks. We're not equipped to care for those people. That's what the Marion House does. That's what Springs Rescue Mission does. So we try to support those organizations. So that's just a little philosophy. But then you come back to employees. I do lean that way. Like, you are mine to care for. Like I said, I got 4 daughters. I kind of think of these people as my kids. Like, just in the same way I care about my kids, I care about my employees. But there are times and ways where that's not really appropriate.
Yeah.
And I don't always think I shut it off soon enough because I want to keep caring. And that's a hard thing too. Like, I don't want to run my business in such a way as I don't care anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I also don't want to cross a line where I'm caring for you in a way that you don't want me to care for you. In a way that's inappropriate or whatever. And
that's a hard thing for small business
It
owners.
is. And it's a reality that we live with. It's a challenge that we accept by virtue of getting into this. And it's a line that we have to walk.
Yeah. But you also have to think about, like, who do you want to be at the end of the day?
Oh, totally.
Right? So if you lean to the far end of caring too much or not caring enough, I mean, I'd lean towards caring too much.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
So good for
with
you.
the acknowledgement that your heart will be broken more often.
Yeah.
It's just
that's true.
it's an acceptance factor. I think at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's like, hey, my default, my wiring is to care a little bit more in these ways, and that just means I might be hurt more. And it's a risk that you got to take, but it's worth it because the upside of caring is so much more valuable than the not caring side of it, right?
I think that's right. Yeah.
So I think it boils down to that. All right, let's do one more.
Okay.
Maybe 2 more. I'll read this one for you.
Okay.
Help you out a little
Thank
bit.
you.
See. And again, if you decide to skip, you get a skip.
I get one.
What's one personal habit that seriously clashes with your entrepreneurial drive, but you just can't seem to shake? What is one personal habit that clashes with your entrepreneurial drive, but you can't seem to shake?
Well, I mean, I could take the what's it called where you there's a phrase for it, like where you kind of weenie out, and say, well, we just talked about it with caring too much,
right.
No, let me try a little harder.
Gosh, that's a tough one.
Well, here's what comes to mind. I don't know that because the question seems to presupposes that you would like to disabuse yourself of that habit.
Exactly.
It seems to, but
that would be the idea.
I do have a habit that sometimes does have that effect, but I'm not even considering how to get out of it, which is I'm a nap taker.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about
Really?
that. I love this. Let's
Almost
go down this path.
almost every day. Not a long one, 10 or 15 minutes. But like if I'm, it don't matter what I'm in the middle of. Like I'm gonna have lunch. I'm gonna take a nap. So there might be times where that clashes because I got stuff I should be doing, but I'm like, I'll do it when I wake up.
So,
Yeah.
what I love about that question is you're right. A lot of times people might look at their habits as a clash, right, to their entrepreneurial drive as something they have to shake. I'm curious though to shift that, and when did you accept that you needed naps, and when did you give yourself the permission to actually take them?
Yeah, it was college. Yeah, and I've never not been a person that takes naps.
Really?
Yeah, through all my career. I mean, there are times when it's just not possible. I'm managing Verizon wireless stores. I don't go in the back and take a nap. But even like on a day
fired
off, or in those days, in those days, one of the things I do is I'd go in because I'm a morning person. I mean, I'm up 5 o'clock every morning. Like, let's go. Let's get. I mean, I'm awake. I'm alive. My brain's firing. My synapses are going. I'm getting some coffee, obviously, to fuel that. And by noon, I'm like, okay, I've done a full day's work now. It's nap time. So I might go in. We opened that store. We opened at 10. I might go in at 5:30 or 6 and I could get 10 hours of work done in that 4 hours before customers showed up.
Yeah.
So I was extremely productive, But then I'd be like, okay, done for the day. Y'all carry on. I'm gonna go and take a nap. So it was early on, and then and I suppose a lot of it's not philosophical, it's biological. Like my body just tells me I need to take a nap, and so that's what I do.
But what I love about the philosophy behind it is the permission to do it.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people might have that sense of like, I need this, but because of whatever society tells them or whatever the kind of tried and true blueprint of how something is done, they kind of fit themselves into that versus honoring what they need. And so I think that's the fun piece is like you figure out a way to honor something that you really need and make it work within your lifestyle.
Yeah, for all of my shortcomings and weaknesses and things that I can't see clearly, that's one that I didn't get married till I was in my 30s. So and then now that I'm married, I've been married 22 years now, my wife and I, and our family, therefore, we do pretty good with that one. Like our whole, ethos is like, I don't care. You're like, well, everybody else is doing this. Like, I don't even know why you brought that up. I do not care one bit what everybody else is doing. I'm going to be doing this over here, but nobody takes naps. Their problem. Yeah. Not mine. Like I'll be over here asleep when you need me, kind of thing. So, and that played into, moving into the RV, like you're going to move. I remember my parents, were just like salt of the earth, hardworking Oklahoma farm. They're like, you're moving all 4 of you into a car? Yeah, it's going to be great, And I remember them struggling with that, like, I don't know about that. I'm like, who says that you have to have a traditional, house?
Yeah.
Like, that's just society.
Yeah.
Like society don't dictate nothing for me. Like I do what I want, Now, obviously I need to do things that are moral and healthy and whatever, try to. But living in a car, that sounds like an adventure. Let's go.
How did your naps work in 100 square feet and 2 little girls running around? You must sleep like a rock.
Well, I do have that gift.
Okay.
But that was easy. I parked some beautiful place, kick everybody out. My wife goes on a nature walk of some sort. My kids are out there playing in the swing sets, and I'm like taking a 10-minute nap in the RV.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a family affair. They know that it's dad's
yeah.
nap time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Everybody knows. Because the other thing is they know that no matter when they get up, I've already been up a while.
Yeah.
I've already had my, my omelet and my coffee an hour before anybody else even thought about waking up. And I've probably returned a bunch of emails. But like I'm very productive in my time whenever, but while y'all been asleep, I've been working.
Yeah.
And so I have no guilt about and now y'all do whatever you want. I'm taking a nap. And then I'll get up and do some more work. Work's not a problem. I don't mind working, but I also don't mind pausing.
Taking a nap.
So, yeah, that's right.
Oh, I love that. Okay, let's do one more.
So fun.
And then we will land this plane.
What you got? Bring it.
Oh, I think, this could be interesting. What was the most unexpected aha moment that you had that completely shifted your business perspective or strategy? And can you remember where you were when it hit?
Ooh, man, a moment. It was I have a very clear one, and it was a slow burn. So I don't know that I'm going to be able to tell you the moment that it hit. But it's been the last 3 years or so, really, when we opened the second location, and I should have come to it before that. But the way I have come to, because I talk about this a lot, the way I've come to talk about it is Story Coffee used to be me. I was Story Coffee.
Yeah.
And there was no difference. If we were hospitable, it was because I was hospitable. If we made good coffee, it was because I made good coffee, because it was just me. And I liked that. Like we built it to be that. It's a very small space. One person can run it, whatever. Well, slowly over time, we were, successful, if that's the right way to say it. And so we got busier. And so we started adding employees. Well, then we added a second location. This has all been a 10-year burn. Somewhere in there, and I don't know the moment, I realized I'm not Story Coffee anymore. It's not me. Story Coffee is another thing, and we can talk about what that is. But whatever it is, it's not me.
Yeah. Oh
my gosh. That was a massive, massive shift for me, because then when it plays out all sorts of ways. But for example, you're let's just take hospitality, which is one thing that we really are, passionate about and strive for, et cetera. Used to, if I said, here's your coffee, have a great day, done. Now I've got 10 other people that have to say, now remember, I told somebody this yesterday. Now remember, every single time you hand the coffee off, you say thank you. Every time. Thank you. Hopefully, if y'all been to Story, y'all have gotten that sometimes. Hopefully every time, because we fail at it a lot of times, But like, my job now is not to say thank you to the person who bought the coffee. It's to train other people to say thank you to the person that got the coffee.
Yeah.
And then a million jillion other things that go along with it, I trained somebody yesterday in cash handling. Used to, if I handled cash carefully, then our till was on. Now I have to train other people to handle cash carefully so our till will be on. But then you throw leaders onto that. Now I have to throw leaders and train them to train other people to handle cash, and on and on and on it goes, right? And I know I'm at the beginning of that. Like, I got 10 employees in 2 locations. Obviously, there are people that have, national, presences, and they have to have systems for which you can get terminated and all kinds of things. But that was the big shift for me. And I've spent, really, I'm doing pretty good at it now, but I spent 2 hard years just wrestling and failing and not wanting to let go of stuff.
What were some of the strategies that have shifted for you in that, going from kind of that mindset of it's you to now looking at it as bigger? What are some different now strategies that you've either implemented or that's kind of alive today that came out of that process?
Yeah, I think the big one, and again, people that do HR are going to be like, yeah, dummy. When you should have
My
learned that a
HR
long time
geeky
ago.
heart is like, oh, yeah, what do we got?
One-on-one conversations. This is so big. It's so important. I actually have to sit down with people, not when I feel like it or when it's convenient or when it crosses my mind, but on a regular basis. Every one of my employees needs to have somebody, sometimes me, sometimes another leader, sitting down with them and saying, okay, like, let somebody else serve the customers for a little while. I need to talk to you about how you doing, how you feeling, any problems, or any questions you have. What are you feeling like you're doing really well? What are you feeling like you're not doing that well? Because I can help you in something that you're not doing really well. And then there's a little bit of it that's, well, let me tell you about some things that I see. I told a girl just this morning, I said, hey, you're doing a great job, and you need to probably go about 3 times faster than you're currently going. She's like, oh. Like, you think there's room to triple? I said, absolutely there is. So this is my chance to tell these people what I see, But that happens in a one-on-one. It doesn't happen on the fly, because for all those years it happened on the fly. Like, hey, here's your coffee. Hey, by the way, speed up. Hey, what can I get for you? That kind of thing, where you're squeezing it in there.
Yeah.
And there's no intentionality to it. It's just, if it happens, it happens. But if it doesn't, and a lot of times it didn't, then it doesn't.
Yeah.
But when you have these one-on-one conversations where, like, okay, we're not going to be serving customers coffee right now. We're going to sit down in another room and just sit down and just talk, and I want to listen. Oh, listening. Dear God, so important. I try to listen more than you talk, Ask questions that are open-ended. Not like, hey, is everything going well for you here? Yes. Okay, I guess we're done. But if you said, like, hey, tell me one thing that's going well as far as you have in your experience, and one thing you think's not going that well. Oh, geez. Think about that a minute. It's like these bucket of questions that makes you like your brain has to turn on and okay, let me think about that a minute,
Yeah.
So that probably the biggest shift that I can think of.
Wow.
Yeah.
Aha.
Do you have any type of training plan in place?
Oh, yeah.
You've got a new employee, you onboard them, because I'd figure, especially with it sounds like you've nailed your client experience, and you have high expectations for, the quality experience, everything from hospitality down to the taste and the thank you at the end of the transaction. Walk us through, how do you get that employee on their very first day, and whatever it is at the end of that training period? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah.
How do you get them there?
I love this conversation. I'll try not to talk too long about this. First of all, they start with 5 shifts where we have a list, and they're written down, a list of conversations that we're going to have. So just kind of introductory, let's get to know each other conversations, and things on that are everything from like that hospitality, something that's real important to us, blah, 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 on down to like kind of some of these philosophical bits that I explain to them. Like, I say, on the first day, early on in the first shift, I say, now I want you to know something. You cannot fail today, because the only expectation I had for you was to show up, and you already did that. So you're going to be a success today. Because I don't expect you to know anything. However, what comes with me not expecting you to know anything is I don't know what you know, and I don't know what you don't know. So I'm just going to talk to you. I always kind of joke and say, I'm going to talk to you like you're a brain damaged 3rd grader that's never been in a coffee shop before. Yeah. Because I don't know. I can say, oh, you know how to make coffee. I can see on your resume you've made coffee. So go make some coffee. And you're like, well, I don't know what your recipe is, and I've never used that particular machine before. And by the way, where do you keep the coffee around here? Like, I don't know what you know. Probably you don't know any of those things, right? So I say, now, this is a coffee brewer, and we're going to use it to brew coffee. And they're like, yeah, I know. But I don't know. I don't know what you know. You might be going, oh, seriously? I thought that was the grinder. I don't know. Yeah. So we start with no expectations, and we start building one at a time the competencies. And the other thing I love saying to them, I say, now, you are here because we believe in you. We hired you and offered you this job because we saw some beauty and greatness and excellence that we believe you have. But there's all these things that are kind of hiding it, such as, I don't know where you keep the coffee filters around here. If I could find a filter, I could make the coffee, but I don't know where they are. So it's my job to, just like an onion, to start peeling back those layers and say, hey, here's where we keep the coffee filters. They're right here. When you need one, that's where they'll be. That and a million other things is what you got to know in order for that beauty that we know is in there to shine out. And I say, now keep in mind, the highest goal I have is for that goodness that's in you to hit my customers. That's the way we build a great business. And it's also the way you're happiest here in your role, is whenever you know, like, hey, I made that coffee and it was so good, and they're going to love it so much because you're good at this job. That's what we're chasing here. And so that's the first conversations. And then after they've been there for 5 shifts, we start we call it the barista certification program, and it's 10 modules. And each one of them has to be taught by a certified trainer that's been through it and has been certified as a trainer. And they're everything from cash handling, some things we talked about already this morning, to hospitality is one of them, basics of coffee, the basics of espressos, 2 different ones. We have one called station management, which is one of my favorite ones. That's where we talk about how, like, hey, if I'm sitting here and I go like this, if you're 2 of you on the bar, and somebody said, hey, can I get some half and half for my coffee? And I do like this, and you're standing in front of the refrigerator, that's your cue to get out of the way and open that refrigerator door, because you can tell I'm coming for the half and half. How do you know? Because the customer just said they wanted half and half, and you felt me lean in. So it's station management. How are we going to work both of us together back here to create an excellent experience? And man, when you're doing that, and everybody knows this, whether it's dancing or just a conversation where you feel like the give and take is just so beautiful, that's when we're at our best, where we're playing off of one another, and you're asking good questions and I'm answering, and I'm asking you good questions, you're answering them, whatever, and so we just are chasing that, and I could go on and on about that, but that's the process. If that was your question, did I answer it? Not really.
As a leader,
You did.
As a leader, our success is dependent upon the success of others. And it really sounds like what you're doing is pouring into the success of others.
Trying to.
And, I think that's the core fundamental philosophy that any leader should take. And you just kind of personified it just right there, and seeing the beauty in these humans and asking for them to share their beauty with others. It's as simple
That's
as
what we
that.
try to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's gorgeous.
Yeah, because we didn't hire you because you were a mean, self-absorbed, uncommunicative person. You know, like that
Yeah.
person didn't get the job. You know.
Yeah.
So we think we have something to work with.
Well, now I'm ready to go learn how to make coffee. So where do I put in my application?
Get certified. Absolutely.
As I'm thinking about my coffee maker that broke at home this morning,
Ooh.
I'm like, dang.
I bet you got
long
one in
day.
this building.
Oh,
Oh,
we
yeah.
do.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We
Yes.
do. We do. And I've already had my fair
I
share.
bet you have.
I made up
As
for
you
it.
should.
Yeah.
Well, Don, thank you so much for
Yeah.
coming and showing yours and getting in a little bit vulnerable and sharing your story with us.
It's been a lot of
And
fun. Thank you so much for having me.
A lot of things. So we've mentioned obviously the locations, but where else can people go drink some of this wonderful coffee and find you guys? Is there anything else that you want to kind of share or plug
Yeah.
that you're up to?
No, just the obvious stuff. Everybody's got a smartphone. You type in Story Coffee Company, you'll find us. We do have a website where you can go and buy coffee online.
You guys
So
roast as well, right?
We
You guys
do roast.
sell beans?
Yep, we roast, and so you can buy coffee online, have it shipped to you if you're not local. To y'all's international audience, I'll just
Yeah.
put that out there.
One
So,
day.
Yeah.
Storycoffeecompany.com is
Cool.
the answer to
All
that.
right. Love it.
We might have to get some for the office.
Yeah.
Let's talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a program for that.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
did
there
you
you
hear
go.
that, business owners? We have a program for that.
Yes.
All right. And also, if you have been to Story Coffee, I'm sure you guys rely heavily on reviews. So hit up the reviews.
Please.
And
Yeah.
tell everybody how much you love Story Coffee, because they are just, you're a pillar of our community. So
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that, Ree.
Yeah, that's great stuff. All right.
All right.
Jason?
Well, thank you guys. Thanks for
Jason.
listening in today, and we will see you guys on the next episode of Show Me Yours.
Bye.